Hey everyone, it's me Charlie here, welcome back, bringing you much needed entertainment during this time of global pandemic. Thumbnails. One of the most important parts in the YouTube video making process. It's the first thing someone's going to see of your video, and if you have a bad thumbnail, people aren't going to click. You know, a picture can tell 1,000 words, and it can sure tell a lot about a video. I've been doing this YouTube thing for a little while now. I'd like to think my thumbnails have come a very long way, and I've been on this platform for quite a long time, both creating and viewing. So I'd like to think I have a bit of an idea of what makes a good thumbnail. And while it's true not all of my thumbnails have been incredible, I'd like to think most of them are pretty alright. The thumbnail for the Japan video, definitely the best thing I've ever made. But today we're not just going to be talking about my thumbnails, we're going to be talking about thumbnails in general, as well as how I make mine, and what I usually look for in a good thumbnail. So without further ado, here are some of my hacks for how to make a good YouTube thumbnail. Easily identifiable imagery. Now you don't want to be making thumbnails where people don't know what something is. You know, animals work really great, so does anything tech related really. Of course it depends on what videos you're making, but no matter what your video is about, you can always include signs and symbols, and other stuff that people will be able to recognize easily. The only time you might not use this is if you're sort of going for that deliberate look, where it's like really chaotic and like the hook of the thumbnail is not knowing what it is. But generally, you're going to be wanting to go with easily identifiable. Because subconsciously people's brains go, oh, I know what that is. Or, oh, that's something I like. A lot of psychology goes into thumbnail making. I'm not a psychologist, so take everything I say here with a grain of salt. Another thing is faces. Faces, and especially people's faces and also animal faces, really do well in thumbnails. I think it's also another subconscious thing where your brain just goes, oh, I'm one of those. Sort of links with easily identifiable, but you see a lot of these thumbnails have people's faces in them, or animals' faces. Or if not faces, at least people in them that you can tell are people, yeah? And just pets in general is my next tip. Pets and animals, you see it everywhere. If your video doesn't have any pets or animals in it though, don't just put them in the thumbnail for the sake of it, because that would be dumb. The next thing are drop shadows and like strokes. You can see it used in this thumbnail of mine here, and a lot of others actually. It just helps make things pop out and stand out from the background, and this can be especially helpful on text in thumbnails, which is my next point. Your text in thumbnails needs to be large, because these thumbnails are a lot of the time going to be quite small. You're not 100% always going to be able to read really small text, so make the text big. I use a lot of text in my thumbnails, and it's of course very common. Yeah, you just can't be having small text in thumbnails. It needs to be able to be seen when it's scaled down, which is my next point. Your thumbnail needs to still work when it's scaled down. The way I usually do this is in Photoshop, which is what I make all my thumbnails in. By no means does this mean you have to use Photoshop solely for making thumbnails. There's a bunch of other great stuff out there, and Photoshop isn't cheap, but if you are a student, you can usually get a free license for it, so look into that. Just the old Alt scroll wheel out, just so you can get an idea of what it looks like small. I think this thumbnail looks quite good, and even when it gets quite small, you can usually still see what's going on. So I'm pretty happy with that one. Now, most people who've been doing this for a while will know, but I still think it's a valid point to include, is you need to be following YouTube's thumbnail scale, because otherwise things are just not gonna look good. You're gonna get black bars, which you can see a little bit of here. If we go to my old channel, you can see this really bad. Yeah, these are some very bad thumbnails. These are some great examples of what not to do, but to be fair, a lot of these were made long before I had access to more powerful editing tools. And also, probably more importantly, I had even less of an idea of what I was doing than I do now. So this here especially is a really good example of what I'm talking about here. Yeah, look at that. Wow. Yeah, this has been squished down, wasn't the right size, looks awful. Luckily, this sort of info is really easy to find. Most places will tell you that 1280 by 720 is the good way to go, and that's usually what I go with. Again, in Photoshop, when you're making a new project, you can just set your custom width and height here. If you don't have Photoshop, that's probably okay, because a lot of other software also has similar built-in features to allow you to change this sort of thing. Now, this might sound like an obvious tip, but I still think it's an important one. Things really need to pop out in your thumbnail. Your subject often needs to be very visually distinct from your background. You can't have different layers blending together, or it can just look really messy, especially when scaled down. Different colors from background always helps as well, and sometimes I even use a bit of a Gaussian blur on my background, just for that little extra step to help it pop a little, which is really easy in Photoshop. You can just go through blur, Gaussian blur. Now, something you'll see pretty frequently in YouTube thumbnails is red circles and red arrows to draw attention to specific parts of a thumbnail image. Personally, I wouldn't really recommend this. I think it's a little bit tacky, very overdone, especially on YouTube. It's really a bit of a meme because of that. Personally, I think a good thumbnail should already have captured someone's attention in the right places without an already overused, obnoxious visual, but that's just me. There is a reason people use it though, and that is kind of because it does work. So if you're okay with using that sort of thing, go for it. I mean, I'm not about to stop you. What am I going to do? This is something I think is actually really important for people specifically who are browsing stuff on your channel, is different thumbnail styles for different series and similar types of videos on your channel. This just makes it really easy for people to find similar stuff that's yours that's the same. All of the inside thumbnails sort of follow after the first, though some of these aren't really that great, especially this one that's pretty bad. But, you know, these ones are alright. And yeah, my resolution thumbnails are usually the same. I mean, I've only done 2 of them, but they'll probably stay the same. And the videos with 10.0 often have us in the thumbnail. And if there was an E3 this year, my E3 thumbnail would look probably the same as last year's. But you know, Rona, what can you do? I think a really important tip for thumbnail making is keeping it simple, not overcomplicating. Sometimes putting too much in your thumbnail can just make it look crowded and turn people off a video. Sometimes just a couple of elements works well, and even just a regular photo works well if it's well taken, and some text even. Just a few elements really. This also somewhat ties into scaling it down, still being able to tell what a thing is. I've been guilty of putting a little bit too much into thumbnails, I think. The Minecraft Christmas video is probably an example, because it sort of all just like looks the same. The stuff in the foreground doesn't really pop. Probably could have just added a bit of a blur to the background, but I didn't at the time. What can you do? So yeah, just keep it simple. And stuff like this, it's aesthetic, man. People love that. And yeah, that's about it from me on different thumbnail tips. Like I said, I'm no expert on this sort of thing, but I think they're good tips. Use them if you want, or don't. I don't really care. I mean, let you know if this has been helpful, of course. But if you thought everything I said was useless, fair enough. Bit of a different video today, I know. I did have plans for a video with Tenno, doing some Lego building, maybe even live on stream, but that might be put on hold for a little bit now, unfortunately. But don't you worry, I got lots of other videos planned, and now that it's school holidays, you might see some more coming your way soon. And you know, now we're all at home, probably just an increase of coming videos anyway. If you're not subscribed, hit that button, leave a like, check out some of my other stuff, really appreciate it. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you later. Bye-bye! Hey everyone, it's me Charlie here, and welcome to my channel. If you hate that guy.